Good afternoon, and thank you each for choosing to spend this time talking about diversified funding. The working title of the presentation is Demystifying the Quest for Money. And I selected that because the complexities of systems regarding funding outcomes for individuals with disabilities can be so overwhelming. And I have to step outside of that dichotomy and think about, if I was trying to achieve this outcome in my own life, who would be the important players in that process? And sometimes that can help with what can feel like an intimidating process. The funding systems that I'm going to talk about today are vocational rehabilitation services, the one-stop career centers, the micro-enterprise centers, and provider agencies. And I think most folks who will be watching this presentation have worked with VR, the one-stop centers, and of course you are the provider agency, and by that I just mean individuals who provide supports to persons with disabilities. The micro-enterprise centers may be an entity that you have less experience with, and that actually is different in each state. It started out as grassroots economic development. In Georgia, it's really funded by United Way as well as other foundations and endowments, such as Hewlett-Packard. They funded a computer lab for the Micro Enterprise Center in Georgia. The Department of Labor Women's Bureau. So that might be an entity that you would want to check into in your own state regarding a possible player as you're trying to achieve outcomes with folks that you provide supports to. Some of the financial options that we have had some experience in are listed in this next slide, and I'm just going to briefly go through those, and then I want to use customer stories to illustrate how we have come to utilize some of these options. Microloans, usually those are $2,000 to $3,000, but certainly can vary. Provider short-term loans, this is something that our organization has begun to do to help folks with startup using donated funds, flexible dollars, endowments, foundations. We have freed up dollars for individuals with disabilities to use those dollars to start up their business or to purchase a resource, and there is no interest charged to the person. There's a period of time that they're to pay that back, but it just gives more flexibility to the customer to be able to get what they needed to achieve the outcomes that have been identified as their goal. We've done this with about 5 individuals. Some of the examples of businesses that we have helped through this short-term no-cost loan. An individual translated the Georgia driver's manual to Spanish. That was a resource lacking in the state as we have become a growing Hispanic community. And so to help him start up that business, we provided him with a no-cost loan. An individual started their own synthetic oil business. Another individual started a lawn care business, and then individual opened up her own salon. And I'll talk more about the lawn care business and the salon later on in the presentation. ITAs, of course, that's the one-stop. In Georgia, the one-stop provides funding for training, and I'll talk a little bit about an individual who used an ITA through our local one-stop. IDAs, that's another form of funding that you may or may not know much about. We have utilized that with about 5 individuals. It's a match funding based financial option. So the individual who is going to access an IDA, of course, would have to have some funds to be able to match that. In Georgia, it was funded under United Way, and now it's under our Micro Enterprise Center called the Edge Connection. But banks also and credit unions offer this option. There's a website you can go to learn more about IDAs. It's www.alternative.org/IDA. IDA. Some of the businesses who utilized an IDA that we were a part of the support network for was a child care business, an online shoe retail business, a home inspection business, and an IT repair and retail business. The SSA spin down is something that we have recently been able to utilize with an individual as their income reached the $2,000 pardon me, limit for SSA regulations. We were able to access those funds along with the profits made in his business to purchase equipment. And I'll share that story with you as well. Past plans, of course, are another option. Family contribution. What we've been doing is encouraging families in middle school and high school to start a fund, an employment fund for their family member with a disability, much like they would a college fund. And that seems to be going well as we have just entered into that concept with families. Donated funds, I'll share with you a story of where we were able to use donated funds to help an individual achieve their employment dreams. Churches, these are wonderful repositories of resources and social capital that can often open doors for individuals with disabilities. And then community businesses. So those will be some of the types of diverse funds that we have been able to work with customers on accessing. I want to just briefly talk about braiding of resources, and that's just working collaboratively with those entities that I've just mentioned and helping in whatever manner needed to assist the individual with achieving their employment dreams. We have not done well with blending of resources. What we have come to find works in our particular state better is what we call fused funding, and that's where dollars are used to support self-employment, resource ownership, business within a business. But the key feature of fused funding is the ability to self-direct the funds of the customer without the need to blend the dollars into one account. In Bill's situation, I want to highlight the work with vocational rehabilitation services and our agency being the provider agency, where in all of these stories there are so many more players because of lack of time, and to be able to go in more detail on the particular situations, I'm going to highlight particular funding systems or creative options and share that information with you. But please know that there are many behind the scenes players beyond the entities I'm highlighting. In Bill's particular situation, he wanted to work outside, this is Bill, in a more naturalistic setting. After much community-based assessment and time spent with Bill, the option settled upon was the Christian Catfish Hole. This is a catch and release or catch and keep pond that is stocked by the owners. What we found out through the surge of this particular type of business was that in the Atlanta area there was a void in that the particular fishing businesses like this did not offer processing of the fish. In North Georgia, that was a very common option offered. It's more of a resort area, and it's just typical to find that there, but in the Atlanta area it was not. So what Bill was able to bring to this business was state-of-the-art fish cleaning processing equipment. This picture that you see on the screen now is one of the ponds where the folks are fishing. Once they catch the fish and they want it processed, they bring it to Bill, who's sitting there on the scooter, and I'll mention what that scooter's all about a little bit later on. This is an example of the catch. This gentleman brought his fish to Bill for him to process, and you can see next to Bill, that little silver box is the fish cleaning equipment. it is amazing. A hose hooks up to it, and just very rapidly the fish skin is removed, and it's a service that adds value to this particular business, because many, like I said, the other businesses don't offer that in the Atlanta area, and many people are choosing to come to this particular fishing hole because they offer this service. They don't want to do it themselves. Please note the silver table as well. That is part of what we worked out with Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Through an ODEP grant, we were able to purchase this fish cleaning equipment, and VR made this workstation, which is easy for accessibility for Bill, as well as to keep it clean from a hygienic standpoint. And additionally, they offered, there's Bill, let me cut back to the fish cleaning process there. There's Bill cleaning the fish. The grant was able to purchase, the ODEP grant for Bill, this equipment, as I had said earlier. And the beautiful piece about the ODEP grant, it was a customized employment grant that we had through the Office of Disability Employment Policy, Department of Labor, is that we were able to achieve outcomes that prove to vocational rehabilitation that folks with disabilities certainly can achieve the sorts of outcomes that they had not seen before. As a result of the outcomes that we were able to achieve through the ODEP grant, vocational rehabilitation now is offering such resource ownership options for individuals with disabilities under the tools and equipment section of their policies and procedures. So that was a wonderful outcome of the customized employment grant that changed VR's thinking in terms of resource ownership as an option that their funding could support. The gentleman in the aqua colored shirt is one of the owners, and the other gentleman in the maroon shirt is his brother, and he works in the business as well. What we were able to work out in terms of thinking about diversified funding in a much broader way is that we were able to come to an agreement where they would offer Bill the on-site employment supports that he might need, in addition to further training on the fish cleaning process and his use of the equipment. Pardon me, because Bill is still learning all the facets of that equipment that the grant purchased. In exchange for that, they have Bill's approval to utilize his equipment when he's not working there. So that was a wonderful arrangement in terms of saving staff resources who can then go to work with someone who does not have a job, by having the owners of the business provide that natural support to Bill. The scooter that Bill's sitting on was also provided by Vocational Rehabilitation Services, in addition to the table, for him to get access to the grounds of the fishing hole. And the owners purchased the porta potty, so Bill would have access to the toileting area outside, because he could not access it on the inside. And so vocational rehabilitation also poured the foundation ramp to go to the porta potty. So in summary, in Bill's situation, the diversified funding had to do with the provider agency providing state-of-the-art fish cleaning equipment, in addition to some initial job supports. VR provided an accessible workstation, a scooter, and then the concrete being accessible to the outside porta potty. And the owners of the business agreed to provide the on-site job support and training. So moving on to the next example is Edward. And what we're focusing on here is the one-stop system that he was able to access to pay for A-plus computer classes. At the time, Edward thought that that's what he wanted to go into, was some sort of computer field or computer-based field. And we used a supported education model to assist Edward in the classes. Edward does have both a mental illness and significant cognitive disabilities. What we found out was that at the point that Edward needed to take the certification testing, he really had not been able to master the skills required for that sort of work. So we went back to the drawing board, so to speak, with the vocational profiling process, spent time with him, and found out that he also had a very strong interest in personal training. He has a connection with a personal trainer at the particular gym that he utilizes. So we used that connection. You know, we were talking a little bit earlier about social capital being a very important piece of the work that we do. So he already has this connection with someone who has a career as a personal trainer. So using the supported education model again, Edward went through the training to become a personal trainer, purchased through the one-stop system using an ITA, individual training account. So right now we're in the early stages of customizing a personal training position in a local gym, again based on the resources that we were provided through Edward's personal trainer. So those are fundings from traditional systems, so to speak, VR, the One Stop, the Microenterprise Council and Center, and provider agencies. What we have found is that you can take that a step further and get really creative with how funds can be used. And it really is a lot of fun because you step outside of the system complexities of funding entities and think about it in a very creative way and start looking at, well, what if we did this or what if we did that? And so that piece of it adds a dimension to the process that could be scary if you think about it in a more traditional way, and you shift your thinking to looking at it almost like a puzzle and think about funding in a creative way. So when we're talking about creative funding, what I'm going to be looking at in the stories that I'll be sharing with you next is the Social Security spend down, family investment, individual training accounts, and agency microloans. Richard is an individual who has very significant disabilities, and you might think you're seeing a double picture of Richard, but that's his twin brother. So Richard is the one in the green shirt. He had a dream of having a lawn care business. He has had some pretty significant history in his life regarding some not so good choices related to his mental illness not being stable. And we knew he was not going to have a lot of options in terms of traditional systems like banks and that sort of thing for his business. In this situation, we offered him, again, a no-cost microloan to start up his lawn care business, to get some supports in place so that he could move forward with this dream that he has. Our agency hired Richard to work in our maintenance department, and so his supports are natural. He's not a part of a formal system anymore. He used to be under our mental health department and supported employment department, but at this point in time he's independent and no different than any other employee of our agency. Richard wanted to expand his business, though, and look at self-employment. And so what we did was worked with him further regarding some supports that he would need. He attended the Micro Enterprise Center's classes to start your own business. And we also were able to look at donations that we as an agency had received that could then be utilized in Richard's business. We, for example, had a vehicle donated to us, and that was turned over to Richard for him to take possession of to help support his business. And additional no-interest loans were offered to Richard as he wanted to expand his business. So that's a nice story in that Richard is completely out of any form of system that's disability focused other than his medications. Diane is another example. I've mentioned earlier that with about 5 customers we had provided the no-interest microloans. She wanted to start her own salon. And so with the startup fund she was able to access through our agency, she was able to begin the process to build this business. And you will see it's called Hair Designs by Broadway. And Broadway is her last name. So there's the grand opening. There is Diane, along with her job coach, Brian. And additionally, she was able to access through the Micro Enterprise Center an IDA. She saved $500, and they matched it 2-to-1, resulting in an additional $1,500 for her to put toward her business. The other piece is that Diane was very creative in purchasing some of the supplies for her salon to make her dollars go much further. She used thrift stores and also was able to contact agencies that had gone out of the business that had been in salons, and she saved a lot of money by the smart shopping that she did. And that's the inside of her salon. And there she is with her job coach. And she also got the magnets to go on her car, so wherever she is, she's going to be advertising her business. With Geoff, we were able to look at the SSS spin down. Geoff had been an individual who we were able to assist with purchasing a couple of vending machines. That was his dream, and through planning, utilizing funds from the Customized Employment Grant, we purchased 2 machines. Geoff has very significant mental illness and cognitive disabilities, and he was someone who VR had identified as not being able to run their own business because he does not have the mathematical skills to operate the books and that sort of thing. What we were able to come to a meeting of the minds on with VR is that you don't have to do every aspect of self-employment. You can hire someone to operate particular aspects of the business that may not be your forte. And that's common in the business world. That's not that's not something unique to Geoff in the support needs that he has. That's typical in the business world. After a couple of years of Geoff being in business, we were able to get VR to purchase a couple of vending machines for Geoff. So at that point in time, he had 4 and was doing very well and making a good profit. Recently, we found out that Geoff had excess funds in his account beyond the $2,000. So Geoff was able to utilize those funds. You know, often, I know in Georgia, what I've often seen is purchasing burial plots or big screen TVs or bedroom furniture to spend down those dollars. And often that is not necessarily what the person wants, nor is it going to improve the quality of their life. So in this situation, Geoff was able to expand his business so that now he has purchased a 5th machine. So he has a 5-person vending business. And the additional aspect of Geoff's story that is wonderful is he was able to hire a driver based on the profits from his business. So he is very independent in the operation of his business in terms of an agency providing support. But he does have a bookkeeper who works with him. There he is with a couple of his vending machines and somebody using it. Okay, Alice's story is unique in that we were able to use donated funds to help her achieve an employment goal as well as working with a community business. Alice comes from Puerto Rico and wanted to work with children. We also knew, again, based on our community-based assessment, that she had acted as an interpreter with her family. They came from Puerto Rico, and her parents did not speak English. So we knew she had this wonderful skill to speak both English and Spanish. After a long deal of planning and actually frustration, we were able to work out a position in a local elementary school where the influx of Hispanic children and families to the area exceeded the school's preparedness to be able to work with these Spanish-speaking children in their school system. So we worked with the immigration services. That's how we found out about this particular situation. And the school system to create this possible dream. At this point in time, it was just in theory because we knew we were not going to be able to create dollars out of nothing to pay the position. And we had met with the school system, and they were just honest with us and said, you know, we are such a bureaucratic entity, there's no way that we're going to be able to fund this position. And they were just honest up front. Well, after much planning, it was around Christmas time when this was happening. The woman in the picture with Alice is the owner of, not the owner, the manager of the branch of Barnes & Noble. And what we did was we had a fundraising period during the Christmas buying at Barnes & Noble so that 20% of all purchases went toward Alice's position in the school system. Now, we were careful not to frame that as this would fund Alice, who has a disability, and she could get a job, because that would be very demeaning. It was a community drive to fund a position in a school system based on the need for an interpreter. The money was not such that we were able to raise enough to fund her position. I mean, it was a good bit, and we were able to, through Alice's decision-making process, fund some resources she would need to be able to perform the particular job. But it wasn't enough. The next picture, you'll see her job coach, Liz, the tall woman. And then the other two women in the picture next to Alice are the teacher and the principal of the school. So we had a working relationship with Bell South Communication Workers of America, a union, a strong union, and we had a history of them donating dollars, and we had already talked with them about wanting to use donated dollars toward resource ownership for the folks we provide supports to as another funding stream. And so we met with them, and they funded Anna's position in the school system. So you see her entering the school there, going into the classroom, doing some work in the classroom there. And those are just the little children at the end of the day leaving. So that was a wonderful story in that you not only had a community business We worked with immigration services in the Latin American community, the school system, and her family as well, to help make her dreams come true. The last story that I want to share with you, again, has some interesting pieces to it because it's a little bit out of the ordinary to involve churches in what we do. In Collin's situation, he has a strong conviction as a social activist in his community. And he had already had a connection with this church that you see the sign for on the screen. And it was one of the mega churches in the area. Tons of folks go there. They reach out to all ethnic communities, and they're a very wealthy church. There's Collin right there entering the side of the church. The next picture shows his attendant. The arrangement between our agency and the church, and in this particular case I also want to highlight vocational rehabilitation services, was that the church funded this 24-hour attendant that Collin needs. They also funded his residence, and they agreed to offer him employment for 2 years as he was working toward a bigger goal of starting his own business. There he's entering the church office and working with this particular woman on, it's kind of a church without walls, where he goes out into the community to reach groups that may not find themselves driven to go to a church in the traditional sense of a church. So Collin's work brings him into the community in a broader way than the church building itself. So what was worked out, in addition to the church supporting him through his residence and with a 24-hour attendant, and the hiring Collin for 2 years, was that we would provide some training and purchase some assistive technology equipment so that his voice would be more clearly understood by the audience that will be a part of his future employment. And then the job coaching. VR purchased the skills needed to assist Collin in the use of the assistive technology, as well as they purchased the resources to adapt his van so that he could get out in the community to be able to provide the supports to the folks based on his particular job vision as he sees it for himself. This is Collin going to the youth program that's part of that church. He teaches a youth group that's part of the payment of the job, or for his job in the particular church. And then there is his van, which has been adapted by VR. So in Collin's case, the Community Services Board, VR, the church community, the African American community, where he's reaching out into many neighborhoods, as well as benefits navigators, came together to develop a support plan for Collin to assist him in achieving his goals. So that concludes the stories that I wanted to share with you that illustrate some ways that you can think about funding in a more creative, diversified way. And I just want to emphasize again that our work with the benefits and planning, assistance, and outreach piece of Social Security is invaluable as we are helping people determine what their budgets need to be based on their particular living situations. VR has been invaluable. We also have a Medicaid waiver in Georgia that is used to fund long-term employment supports, and then the ODEP grant. So thank you for your time.